Hi, my name's Stewart Desson, the founder and CEO of Lumina Learning. I'd like to share with you some research that looks at the Big Five model, the Spark model, using 4 of the factors, and links it to the Digman de Jong suggestion of a 2-factor model. So we're going to see how those models overlay, and we're also going to have a look at what's called the travelling salesman problem, which is a technique from mathematics which is used for, in this case, analysing correlations and suggesting a layout for our model. So here you have the Lumina Spark model as hypothesized. It's 4 of the 5 factors in the Big Five with Lumina Spark. And we can hypothesize that Digman and de Jong, that the beta plasticity model is up there on the top right, and alpha stability bottom left, and we can draw a line through the model based on researching what Digman and de Jong say these 2 factors are. We would be expecting to see that shining through in our data. Now, what we're going to do now is have a look at the travelling salesman problem, which comes from the field of operational research. And William Rowan Hamilton, an Irish mathematician, was the first person to properly structure this model, and it was applied a couple of hundred years ago in Switzerland and Germany, when salespeople were looking to travel around Europe but wanted to find the route between the different cities that had the least cost and the least amount of journey time. And they formulated that as a mathematical problem. They created a matrix of the journey times between all the different cities and the different costs, and wanted to minimize time and minimize cost. That formulation is called the travelling salesman problem. Here's a simple graphic of what it might look like if you need to move around different villages in this case. What's the optimal way? There is one optimal solution. Well, it occurred to me that if we take the data from Lumina Spark, extroversion correlates negatively with introversion. It would seem sensible to put them on opposite sides of the wheel, but are we sure? Maybe extroversion might correlate negatively with something else in the model. What should be next to extroversion? Should it be next to outcome focused, or should it be next to discipline driven? Well, if we look at a correlation matrix and then apply the travelling salesman routine to it, it's possible to find the optimal way to lay out the model so as to maximise the correlations between any adjacent aspects in the model. And that's exactly what we've done. So if we have a look here, we've looked at the 8 aspects. We can see how down to earth does in fact have a good correlation with discipline driven, and indeed extroversion correlates more with outcome focused than it does with discipline driven. So we can instinctively see what would be a good layout, but when we run it through the travelling salesman algorithm, and here's an example of the code for do that, you'll be delighted to hear that this totally supports the structure of the Lumina Spark model. And here we have the correlation. So the correlation between people-focused and introversion is 0.2, between introverted and down-to-earth 0.38, discipline-driven to down-to-earth is 0.5. You then get a weaker link, so we're now moving from the the alpha to the beta. The correlation is just 0.19 between discipline-driven and outcome-focused, 0.3 as we go from outcome-focused to extroversion, 0.4 from extroversion to big picture, and then big picture to inspiration-driven 0.6, and then again the slightly weaker seam at 0.15. So what you're seeing here is the optimal configuration. This is the best way to lay things out if you want to maximize the correlations as you move around the mandala. You can also see the negative correlations as well across the mandala. Obviously extroversion is in fact the opposite to introversion, outcome focus, people focus, and so on. I hope you found that fascinating. It's another rationale for explaining why the model is laid out in a circular format. Traditionally with Big Five models, they're often laid out in a linear way in an attempt to remove the any cross correlations. But here we found the cross correlations an interesting feature that allow us to lay it out in a circumplex or a circular way that makes great sense to people that work with it. Thank you.